to initially Gaurav Jain, who works for Spark Capital and is our, we have a strong connectivity with Spark Capital as one of our partners who are on the ground as part of our local network. And I've known Gaurav for a long period of time, and they have, he in his current and prior role was very helpful in terms of the virtual grassroots and physical grassroots tours that we put together. So I'd just like to introduce Gaurav to then introduce Mr. Pinaki Chakraborty.
All right. Thank you, Mukundan, and a very good afternoon to everyone. At the outset, I'm very glad, and we at Spark Capital are glad to be part of Grassroots Tour ever since I've joined the firm in the past 1 year, and even prior in my previous stint. Without wasting time, I'll just quickly give a sort of a 2 minutes introduction about Spark Capital. So Spark Capital is a 20-year young investment bank, institutional equity research, headquartered in Chennai, but offices in Mumbai and Bangalore. I'm based out of Mumbai. We are known for our intellectual honesty, on the ground research, keeping away from the noise in the market, and bringing the best to investors both in India and abroad. For the session today, I have the pleasure of introducing Mr. Pinaki Chakraborty. He is the former director at National Institute of Public Finance and Policy. This body works under Ministry of Finance for the Government of India, and conducts research on public finance and contributes to the process of policy making. Mr. Pinaki, in his previous role, has worked as the Chief Social Policy at UNICEF, member of the Advisory Council of the Finance Commission of India, and various committees with deals with financial statistics and so on and so forth. He brings a lot of insights on the functioning of the government from the outside, how things work here on the ground as far as India is concerned. So I'm sure we will take a lot of insights sitting very far out from him. With that introduction, let me now call him for his insights on how he sees India in the current context of geopolitical tension, rising crude prices, and inflation. Over to you, sir. The floor is all yours.
Yes, thank you, Gaurav, for the introduction. I am delighted to be here to speak on Indian economy. What I'll do is I will try to situate the issue of macro fiscal management in India in light of the recent crisis in due to the war between Russia and Ukraine. And also I would like to bring to the bring something that is important to realize that yes, there is macroeconomic uncertainties, increased macroeconomic uncertainties because of the war, but when it comes to management of inflation in India or globally, in that for that matter, I think we also need to look at the way we have intervened in managing COVID and infusing liquidity. So the entire elevated inflation level just cannot be attributed, in my view, to crude and also the liquidity situation, and also to the war. So given that, I will that brief introduction, I'll start. I think India's growth, as all of us know, there was no growth. Actually, it contracted during the COVID year 2021. But if we look at 21-22 data macro level, as all of us know, we have stabilized, and we have started showing good progress a broad-based recovery in terms of various macro indicators. Also, if we look at the high frequency micro level data, industry-wise data, sector-wise data. So that way, I think the recovery that India sees in the growth front is in my view is sustainable, and going forward we should be growing at the rate of I don't want to guess, but will not be less than 6 to 7% going forward in real terms. So if we are talking about an elevated inflation level of 6% going forward for the next 1 or 2 this year, so we are actually at a growth path of around 12 to 13% of nominal GDP. So that's the first point. Now second issue is that how inflation can create huge distributional consequences, because all the time we have been talking about, you keep the rate low because support recovery, so that growth increases, and then the redistributive part of it, because inflation is a tax, so poor gets most affected by inflation. So if we have an inflation which is at an elevated level of more than 6, and our MPC says that that it should be 4 and plus minus 2, so the point is we have a problem of management of inflation. Now, how much of it is due to the COVID, and how much of it is due to the just sudden increase in elevated oil prices and things like that? I think when it comes to the number, that is the rate of inflation, I think the oil push inflation and its impact on the overall inflation is based on something which was done much earlier. So I am saying that the weightage given to, because the economy has moved, so weightage given to oil passing on to the food price, realized inflation and inflation rate, there is a difference. So the oil prices go up, realized inflation goes up, but if we talk about inflation rate, the weight of oil is much less. So realized inflation due to oil will be much higher. So that is a different part of the story. But I think why we are having an elevated level of inflation, because we have been going through a fiscal deficit, taking center and states together more than 10% of GDP. So, and if we look at the advanced economies debt, it has increased to 120%. The latest IMF fiscal monitor shows that data. Middle and emerging economies, if we look at their debt ratio is around 60%, debt to GDP ratio, I'm talking about public debt only. So debt to GDP ratio around 60%. But if we look at 3 countries among the emerging market economies, one is Brazil, other is India, and the third country I think is Argentina, where we have a debt ratio which is close to 90% of GDP. So if going forward, and IMF fiscal monitors say this elevated debt level of emerging market economies and of advanced economies will start declining only after 26. So this 2026. So it's a one-time fiscal shock in terms of debt ratio has resulted in a major increase in debt payment. And this is going to recede only after 26 if we try to follow the path of fiscal prudence. So going forward, I think if we have to sustain growth at 7 to 8%, we need to manage our deficit and bring it down to nobody is talking about 3%, which is as the target under FRBM Act. Now we are talking about bringing it down to 4.5% of GDP. So this fiscal expansion also resulted in major inflation, and it will remain at an elevated level. Now on the question of crude, I think it's given in the sense that India's dependence on import of crude oil is well-known story. So we don't really produce much. So naturally, if the crude prices go up, it will have an impact on inflation. Second is, if we are talking about revenues. Now this is a kind of catch-22 situation where oil being price inelastic, so a lot of resources are being mobilized both by the center and taxes by taxing oil. So I don't see that we can really reduce that to a great extent, because our dependence historically on oil revenue is very high. It only, so if we look at the long run trend, so in some but in some occasions actually we react more. But if we look at the long run trend, oil has always been giving a lot of revenues to the governments, and that means center and state governments together. So that part is a part of larger reform. There is discussion about bringing in under GST. So even if it comes under GST, I think it will become efficient because we will get input tax credit. But taxation on oil will certainly have to be at a higher level. Otherwise, it will not be revenue neutral. Taxation on oil is a very complex issue, and going forward, we must take critical reforms of taxation, critical reforms in the area of taxation of oil. So that is that is a second issue that I think can have a lot of positive impact on growth. The third issue, I think we are talking about rural economy, business growth in smaller towns, etc. But I think when we talk about macro number of 7-8% of GDP as the growth rate, I think it is very important to recognize that in India the growth distribution is very unequal. I am not talking about interpersonal distribution. I am talking about regional distribution. And there are 6-7 big states who contribute almost 50% of India's GDP. So if 6-7 big states are contributing 50% of India's GDP, and given that these states are also were also severely affected by COVID, I think that for investment to pick up in these states, we need to ensure that those supportive policies are in place. So one is the macro policy at the national level, and also the policies by the state government. So detailed understanding, I thought that will be very useful, and some work is already being we have been doing. So if we say what are these 7 big states? One is Maharashtra, Haryana, Karnataka, and then we have got Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, and Delhi. So if we take these 7 big states, I think they contribute 50% of. That's a special dimension of regional inequality. So if we are talking about we have to grow at 7%, we also need to see what kind of potential exists in terms of both growth and demand in other parts of the country. So the potential for growth is huge, though we are concentrated in few big states. Now at this level, I would also like to emphasize that there is a lot of discussion happening about how much of the public investment should be done in India so that private investment crowds in. That's the kind of argument given in this year's budget. If you look at capital expenditure, there has been 1 trillion Indian rupees interest-free loans given to the states to enhance capital spending. Now, the multiplier effect of that capital spending is very different than the multiplier effect of the capital spending done by the central government. Because if a rural road is built, market gets connected. But if the but states build state roads, but national highways are built by the central government. So this kind of last mile connectivity through this high capital expenditure will have huge growth multiplier effect. I think that part, and will also reduce the volatility in the capital spending. I have done some work. If we look at India's total capital expenditure of center and states together, it's around 4% of GDP. And out of that 4%, 2.75% is made by the states. So the capital investment at the state level remains a critical driver to bring in private investment in regions which are developing and has large infrastructure gaps, has large demand deficits. So that is the other part of the story. Going forward, I would say there are 3 fiscal risks that we need to be careful about to grow at 7% plus in the next 5 years. One is the inflation risk. And for the inflation risk, I think monetary tightening will have to be undertaken without much delay. So yes, I think broad-based recovery has started. I think there is a need to signal that. So monetary tightening is very important. Let us see what the MPC does. Second is the question of fiscal sustainability. If we are not getting into a fiscally sustainable path with 90% debt to GDP ratio, our primary expenditure for social spending, for development spending, for consumption, direct consumption, which benefits households, poorer households, I think will be impacted. The last point that I wanted to highlight here is the issue of inflation, the issue of balancing public investment through innovative means. So there are various ways. Those are in the budget, and there are various things which are not in the budget. And there the downside fiscal risk. The third point is the downside fiscal risk, because they are not in the budget, is the issues with the power sector. So India has a power sector discoms, distribution companies debt to the not debt deficit today at around 7 trillion Indian rupees. So today or tomorrow, this will be required to be financed. This will be financed by the governments at the state level, because you really cannot allow power sector to bust, because it's extremely political issue. So I think power sector reform will also bring in a lot of revenues. I think so if you are able to keep our sector reform, which we see in terms when we look at generation, because we have got power which is now we are not a power deficit country, we are a power surplus country, but at the distribution level there are some losses that is being incurred by the discom companies, and they can be a major fiscal risk going forward. So if we are able to manage these three, I think we should be able to grow on a sustained basis at 7 to 8% in the next 4 to 5 years. So I stop at that, and I'll be happy to take any question that you may have.
Mukundar, you want to start?
Yeah. So what do you think then is the biggest risk for India from a macroeconomic perspective?
No, as I said, there are three major macroeconomic challenges that one should look at. One is this elevated level of debt, and there is a pressure, because we were at 67% of debt ratio. Now, the COVID has increased that to 90%. So today, the debt of the government, taking center and states together, is 90% of GDP. Interest payment is of the central government is around 25% of the revenue expenditure. So these are risks. But yet there is this argument that debt is okay. We don't have revenue. We should borrow more. So I think we need to be careful and need to have a sustainable fiscal path. That is one major risk that we need to handle. So we should not take debt very lightly, because globally there is this view emerging that debt really doesn't matter. But if we have borrowed, somebody has to pay. So who would pay? It is the taxpayer who has to pay. So I think it's a huge issue of intergenerational consumption and equity. So debt needs to be considered a major challenge that we need to tackle.
And I think when we reflect back about 10 years ago during the taper tantrum, India was listed as a fragile five, for example. So for a lot of foreign investors, that's still in the memory bank. What do you think have been the major things that have driven the change in the last 10 years, and why that fragile five status won't happen again?
A couple of very important reforms that we have undertaken in the last 10-15 years are worth noting, because one is the entire country now has a rule-based fiscal framework to manage its finances from the public finance perspective. So there is an envelope of hard budget constraints. So that fragility is substantially reduced. Second important strength of India is the composition of debt. Who owns Indian debt? Indian debt in the public sector is owned by Indians. So the point here is that our exposure, this 90% debt to GDP ratio, is owed to the Indians in India. So there is no outflow of resources from India to elsewhere. So there is no immiserization of growth, the kind of argument that Bhagavati gives. So that is not there. Third issue I think is important reform which we don't talk much because the COVID has happened, is the reform in GST, because the kind of unified tax structure we have brought in has brought in some kind of harmonization. So to GST, we can discuss about the design of GST, whether it is good, whether it is bad, whether it is ugly. But the point here is that given that we have been able to harmonize, I think that is going to be major that is going to reap dividends as we move along, because it is also not the GST of July 1st, 2017. The GST structure and design has improved over time. So that way, this fundamental changes that has occurred in terms of policy, I think on the public finance side, India does not appear to be in a condition where we will have a default or you feel it's fragile. So,
and this shift towards formalization, which is occurring, probably started off by demonetization as well as the trend towards digitization. All those things are working together as a force. Do you think that has an impact on employment? Given that India's economy used to be driven by MSMEs, and today some of the corporate environment for those businesses are challenged?
This is a very important question. I think this is a very, 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 very important question, and thank you for asking. Not that I have got an answer, but couple of possibilities. I think one is the issue of GS demonetization. Yes, that was a shock and might have resulted in some kind of formalization. But when you have GST, process of formalization is kind of automatic, because those who are not there in the formal sector will not get input tax credit, so they will not be competitive and it will go. So that kind of formalization is something which is happening, and we must recognize how much of it has actually happened and how do you define this formalization. That is very important. Now, if we say that somebody is paid through an online system of, say, Google Pay or whatever, and we say that that's kind of formal. So no, that's only method of payment has changed. The person may be still in the informal sector. So what is formalization? That basic definition will also have to be discussed and arrived at. So secondly, there is our basic data on informal and formal sector is a question of proportion, because we only have a formal sector estimate. So informal sector, how much it has grown or how much it has shrunk, is something which requires more nuanced data. On employment, I would say yes. Employment, there are multiple factors. We have not seen the unemployment survey based data, but certainly when large part of the people are in the informal sector, and if it shrinks, naturally that would have an adverse impact on employment. And if we if we relate this with the MGA NREGA demand for employment, I think that actually supports that evidence, saying that yes, people are going back to right-based employment provided by the Employment Guarantee Act. So, but state-wise, there will be differences, so it's not one size fits all kind of an answer. I think there will be huge variation across states about formal and informal sector. But the general story, I would like to see it this way.
Yeah, Mr. Chakraborty, I have a question. So for the audience, I mean, if in the recent sort of couple of months or maybe last 6 months, we've seen a sharp FII outflows, which is sort of dominating the narrative. But if we just zoom out a little and see the amount of forex reserves that India has accumulated over the past 2 years are unprecedented in the form. If I have my numbers correct, maybe around 150 to 160 billion dollars. So we are sitting very neat on a $600 billion of reserves when countries around us are actually facing issues. Can you, for the audience, uh, uh, demystify what does this mean and how this can help India for the next few years or for the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I think there are two components to it. I think one is a kind of strategic reserve that you need to hold for country security, import will of basic essentials that you import. I think from that level, the kind of reserve that we have is significantly higher. So that way it gives you the leeway in terms of doing a lot of things. It has a lot of goods, and that we know. So I'm not going into the goods part of it. I'm talking about the other aspect of holding large foreign exchange reserves. So what are the components of money supply, reserve money into the system? So the one is government credit to RBI giving printing money and giving it to the government. So that is one component of the increasing money supply. So that's the component of reserve money. And other is the net foreign exchange reserve. So the point here is when we are having a large foreign exchange reserves, our shift has moved to our focus has moved from to managing exchange rate and foreign exchange inflow. So that is so there is a cost to it. So how much we should hold or we should continuously increase our foreign exchange is something needs to be debated. I'm not, so there has to be an optimal level. Otherwise, holding it also has its own cost. So this also could be inflationary because you are holding it against something else, right? So it hasn't just come in, conceptually speaking. So there is every single dollar has equivalent amount of rupees behind it, right? So in that case, so this is also increasing your money supply. So in that case, I think how much you should hold, there is a quasi fiscal cost of holding, because if you are holding it in the form of domestic currency, probably you would have got RBI would have earned dividends more, or interest earn more interest, which would have come back to the government in terms of profit. So I think strategic reserve is good. Having strategic plus reserve is also good, but even strategic plus may not be something which always be considered as the great thing to have.
Sure. And then probably last question for the session is, if you were to highlight in your view some of the policies that government has undertaken, especially this production link scheme that government wants to envisage and build the exports a bit of it. It has been a problem area for India, and we have hit almost $400 billion this year, highest ever. So for the audience, if you can help them understand what this can mean and how it can make India probably a even more investable country going down the line.
No, I think that's a very good policy initiative, like the way various redistributive policies government initiated. I think this is one on the export side, very focused policy, and I think this is, and this is not a subsidy which is not targeted. So if it is linked to export, I think that has got its huge competitiveness in terms of huge impetus for greater export. I think probably that is why we are seeing also a rise in export in the last couple of years. But again, I think if we have to make it broad base in terms of export promotion. I think it should reach, we are talking about startup, we were talking about potential business houses who can do good exports, become efficient entrepreneurs. I think that distributive aspect will have to be taken into consideration. I think we need more data, more analysis to understand how it has worked. But prima facie, it appears that the scheme is working and it has the potential to help growth export.
Great. So thank you so much. On that positive note, we'll thank you for sparing your time and sharing your insights on the Indian economy. For any further questions, I will write back to you via Gautam, and we'll try and address those as and when they come along.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.